The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain Sarah Chen as she stood at the command center of the ISS Hyperion. The exploration vessel's cutting-edge sensors had detected an anomalous signal emanating from just beyond the Kuiper Belt, something unlike anything humanity had encountered before. After 6 months of deep space patrol, this could be the discovery that justified their mission. Signal analysis complete, Captain. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez called from his station, dark eyes fixed on the holographic display floating before him. It's structured. Definitely not natural. Chen nodded, her short black hair catching the blue glow of the bridge's ambient lighting. Show me. The main view screen filled with a complex waveform, pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. 20 years of space exploration had taught Chen to trust her instincts, and right now, every one of them was screaming that this was important. Dr. Evans, she called to her chief scientist. Your thoughts? Diana Evans pushed her glasses up her nose, a habit that had survived even in zero gravity. The pattern suggests intelligence, Captain. The signal contains mathematical sequences that couldn't occur naturally. But it's what's hidden within those sequences that's fascinating. She manipulated the display, highlighting subtle variations in the waveform. There's data here, massive amounts of it, encoded in a way we've never seen before. Hostile? Chen asked, though she already suspected the answer. Humanity had learned to be cautious since reaching for the stars. Unknown, Evans replied, her voice tight with concentration. But it's becoming stronger. Whatever's generating this signal is either getting closer or powering up. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each member acutely aware of the significance of this moment. Humanity had searched for signs of intelligent life since first venturing beyond Earth's atmosphere. Now, on a routine patrol mission, they might have found it. Captain, Rodriguez's voice cut through the quiet tension evident in his tone. New contacts, multiple signatures, massive ones, just appeared at the edge of our sensor range. Chen's training kicked in instantly. Battle stations, shields up. Communications, prepare a burst transmission to Earth Command. If this goes sideways, they need to know what we found. The Hyperion's crew responded with practiced efficiency, but before they could complete their preparations, the ship's systems began behaving erratically. Displays flickered, controls became unresponsive, and a low hum permeated the hull. We're being scanned, Evans reported, fingers dancing across her console. The energy signature. It's like nothing in our database. It's passing through our shields as if they weren't even there. Can we break free? Chen demanded, watching as more massive shapes appeared on their sensors, their true forms hidden behind some kind of sophisticated cloaking technology. Negative, the helm officer replied. Engine response is degrading. Whatever they're using, it's affecting our core systems. Chen opened a shipwide channel. All hands, this is the captain. We are experiencing first contact with an unknown species. Stay calm and remember your training. We don't know their intentions, but we are representatives of Earth and humanity. Whatever happens, remember that. The massive shapes drew closer, finally becoming visible through the bridge viewport. They were unlike anything human minds had conceived. Massive crystalline structures that seemed to defy physics, their surfaces rippling with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Captain, Evans whispered, the signal. It's changed. I think I can translate part of it now. Before she could continue, every screen on the bridge filled with symbols that shifted and flowed like liquid mercury. A voice emerged from the ship's speakers, though voice wasn't quite the right word. It was more like the concept of communication made manifest, bypassing their ears and appearing directly in their minds. Species encountered, deisaggination, human, tla sethification, developing, status, suite bidul for intgration. Chen felt a strange sensation spreading through her body, a tingling that started in her extremities and worked its way toward her core. Around her, the bridge crew showed signs of experiencing the same effect. "Send the burst transmission," she ordered, fighting to keep her voice steady. Tell them we found something. Tell them to be ready." "Transmission sent," Rodriguez confirmed, his movements becoming sluggish. "But Captain, I don't think. I can't." One by one, the bridge crew slumped in their stations, consciousness fading. Chen fought it longer than most, her last act being to activate her personal log recorder. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the ISS Hyperion. We've made contact with an advanced species. If you find this, if anyone finds this, remember that we didn't go quietly. And we didn't go alone." The crystalline ships surrounded the Hyperion, their surfaces pulsing with energy. As Chen finally lost consciousness, the last thing she saw was her ship being enveloped in a field of shifting light, like a soap bubble that bent reality itself. The ISS Hyperion, with its crew of 300 of humanity's finest, vanished from known space. But unlike other vessels lost to the void, this disappearance would not be the end of their story. It would be the beginning of something far more significant. Humanity's first step into a larger, more dangerous universe than anyone had imagined. And in the darkness between the stars, the beings that had taken them began their work, not realizing that their new specimens would prove to be unlike any species they had encountered before. They didn't understand that humans, when pushed to their limits, had a habit of pushing back. They would learn. Captain Chen awoke to a world of crystal and light. Her first sensation was of floating, suspended in some kind of transparent chamber filled with a luminescent fluid. Beyond the curt walls of her prison, she could see similar containers stretching into the distance, each holding a member of her crew. The beings that moved between the chambers were like nothing human imagination had conceived. They seemed to shift between solid and energy states, their forms constantly flowing and reforming. Chen would later learn that the crew had dubbed them shifters, though their true name was unpronounceable by human vocal cords. Subject demonstrates enhanced neural activity during observation periods. A voice echoed in her mind. The shifters had mastered some form of direct neural communication, bypassing the need for verbal speech. Recommend accelerated testing protocol. Chen had lost track of time in this place. The shifters kept their specimens in a state between consciousness and sleep, aware enough to respond to stimuli but unable to resist. However, they had made a crucial mistake. They hadn't accounted for human adaptability. It started with Dr. Evans, whose scientific mind had begun to understand the patterns in the shifters' tests. Through subtle changes in her neural responses, she found ways to communicate with nearby crew members during the brief periods of full consciousness they were allowed. They're studying our problem-solving abilities, she managed to convey to Chen during one such moment. Each test is more complex than the last. But, Captain, they're teaching us more than they realize. The shifters' testing chambers were marvels of biotechnology, interfaces that connected directly to the subject's nervous systems. They used these to present increasingly complex scenarios, measuring how their specimens responded. But with each test, the human subjects weren't just solving puzzles, they were learning how the technology itself worked. Lieutenant Rodriguez was the first to make a breakthrough. His cybersecurity training helped him recognize patterns in the neural interface, subtle flaws in the system that could be exploited. During one test, he managed to maintain consciousness longer than the shifters intended, gathering crucial information about their captor's technology. It's all connected. He communicated to nearby crew members through subtle neural pulses they'd learned to exchange. The chambers, the tests, even the shifters themselves, they're all part of one massive neural network. They call it the hive. The shifters continued their experiments, unaware that their subjects were gradually building a resistance to their control. They documented human responses to various stimuli, noting with interest how quickly the specimens adapted to new challenges. What they didn't realize was that this adaptation went far beyond their tests. Chief Engineer Maya Patel discovered that the neural interfaces could be subtly manipulated during maintenance cycles. They're not just reading our minds, She revealed during one of their covert communications. They're changing us, but that connection goes both ways. The changes were subtle at first. Enhanced neural processing, improved memory retention, faster reaction times. The shifters saw these as successful results of their experimentation. They didn't understand they were inadvertently giving their captives the tools needed to fight back. Months passed, marked only by the rhythm of tests and observations. The crew of the Hyperion endured, but they weren't just surviving. They were evolving. The neural interfaces meant to control them became conduits for their own transformation. They see us as specimens, Chen observed during a rare moment of clear communication with her senior staff. That's their weakness. They don't recognize us as equals, so they don't guard against us learning their secrets. The shifters continued to document their subjects' progress with clinical detachment. They noted increased neural plasticity, improved problem-solving capabilities, and unprecedented adaptation rates. What their reports didn't show was the growing network of consciousness developing among their human specimens, through the very systems meant to study them. The crew of the Hyperion had begun to forge their own kind of hive mind. Not the rigid, hierarchical structure of their captors, but something uniquely human, a web of individual minds working in concert, each retaining their identity while sharing knowledge and strength. Dr. Evans made another crucial discovery during a particularly intense testing session. The shifters, they're not truly individual beings, she shared through their growing neural network. They're more like nodes in a vast biological computer. That's why they don't understand us. They can't comprehend true individuality. This insight proved to be the key to everything that followed. The shifters had built their entire civilization around the concept of the collective, the hive. They had no defense against the unpredictable creativity of individual human minds working together by choice rather than biological imperative. As the shifters methodically documented their specimens' development, they remained unaware that they were watching the formation of something unprecedented, a human collective that maintained both unity and individuality, powered by technology meant to suppress them. Captain Chen, floating in her crystal chamber, felt the growing strength of her crew's connected consciousness. The shifters had meant to study humanity's potential, but they were about to become subjects of their own experiment. Continue monitoring neural development in specimen group A1, the shifters noted in their logs. Results exceed predicted parameters. Recommend advanced integration protocols. In their clinical precision, they had made a fundamental error. They had given humans access to their technology, their knowledge, and most importantly, time to adapt. They thought they were observing humanity's limits. Instead, they were witnessing humanity's transformation. And in the vast network of crystal chambers, 300 human minds prepared for the moment when observation would turn to action. The hive had made its first mistake. It wouldn't be its last. The transformation of the Hyperion's crew accelerated in ways the shifters never anticipated. What had started as subtle neural adaptations evolved into something far more profound. Dr. Evans, whose mind had always been exceptional, was the first to demonstrate abilities that went beyond mere survival. During a particularly complex problem-solving test, she didn't just complete the challenge, she altered it. Through the neural interface, she managed to modify the test parameters themselves, creating a feedback loop that gave her access to deeper layers of the hive's systems. They built these systems to be perfect, she shared through the crew's growing neural network. But perfection means predictability, and predictability can be exploited. The shifters noticed the anomaly, but misinterpreted its significance. To them, it was simply another data point, evidence of successful adaptation. They increased the complexity of their tests, not realizing they were providing their specimens with more tools, more opportunities to learn and grow. Chief Engineer Patel discovered she could sense the underlying architecture of the hive's biotechnology. The crystal chambers weren't just containers, they were nodes in a vast living computer. During maintenance cycles, she began making microscopic adjustments to her chamber structure. It's like programming, she explained to the others, but with biology and energy instead of code. Every change we make becomes a part of their system, too subtle for them to detect. Lieutenant Rodriguez, meanwhile, had turned his attention to the shifters themselves. Through careful observation and the enhanced perception granted by their forced evolution, he began to understand the true nature of their captors. They're not separate from their technology, he revealed. The shifters, the chambers, the tests, it's all one organism. They don't build machines, they grow them. And now, so can we. Captain Chen coordinated these discoveries through their covert network, carefully managing the flow of information to prevent detection. The crew's shared consciousness had become sophisticated enough to maintain constant communication, while appearing dormant to their observers. Each test is an opportunity, she reminded her people. Every scan is a chance to learn more. Let them think they're studying us. We're the ones doing the real research. The shifters continued their methodical documentation, noting with clinical interest how their human specimens were developing beyond projected parameters. They increased neural integration levels, introduced more complex scenarios, and expanded their observation protocols. They didn't realize they were watching the birth of something entirely new. A critical breakthrough came when Dr. Evans managed to access historical records stored in the hive's memory. The shifters had done this before, found species, studied them, and ultimately absorbed them into their collective. But humans were responding differently. Other species tried to resist by fighting back directly, she shared. They tried to maintain their original forms, their original ways of thinking. We're doing something else. We're not just resisting change. We're directing it. The changes in the crew became more pronounced. Their neural architecture evolved, allowing them to process information at unprecedented speeds. Their consciousness expanded, able to perceive and manipulate the energy fields that the shifters used as naturally as humans once used their hands. But unlike their captors, they didn't lose themselves to these changes. Each crew member remained distinctly individual, their unique personalities and memories intact. They were becoming something more than human, but they remained fundamentally human in the ways that mattered most. Captain Chen felt the weight of these changes more than most. As the crew's neural network grew stronger, she could sense each of her people, their thoughts, their fears, their determination. She carried their trust like a physical thing, using it to guide their collective evolution. We're not just surviving, she told them during one of their shared consciousness sessions. We're becoming something they never imagined possible, something that combines their power with our humanity. The shifters, in their arrogance, had assumed that forcing human minds to adapt to their technology would simply create more nodes for their hive. Instead, they had created a bridge between two fundamentally different ways of existing. The crew learned to manipulate the energy fields that made up their prison, making subtle changes that accumulated over time. They learned to read the complex patterns of the hive's thoughts, finding the blind spots in its vast but rigid consciousness. Most importantly, they learned patience. Every test endured, every scan analyzed, every moment of observation became another step in their preparation. The shifters thought they were watching humanity reach its limits. Instead, they were watching humanity transcend them. Final integration phase recommended. The shifters noted in their logs. Specimens demonstrate unprecedented neural development. Prepare for full absorption into the hive consciousness. In their crystal chambers, the crew of the Hyperion continued their silent work. The shifters had meant to study human potential, to measure humanity's limits. Instead, they had created something that had no limits, a fusion of human ingenuity and determination with technology beyond anything Earth had dreamed possible. The time for observation was coming to an end. Soon, the shifters would learn what happened when humanity stopped adapting to survive and started adapting to win. The moment of transformation came during what the shifters intended to be their final integration test. They had prepared their most sophisticated neural interface yet, designed to fully merge their human specimens into the hive consciousness. They never realized they were walking into a trap years in the making. As the integration protocols initiated, Captain Chen gave the signal they had all been waiting for. Remember who you are. Her thoughts echoed through their shared network. Remember what we've become. The shifters detected the first anomaly when Dr. Evans's neural patterns began to cascade through their systems. What looked like deterioration in her cognitive functions was actually a carefully crafted virus, built from the very biotech they had used to enhance her mind. Fascinating, the shifters noted, still maintaining their clinical detachment. Subject demonstrates unexpected neural architecture, attempting to compensate. But there was no compensation possible for what was coming. Lieutenant Rodriguez had spent months mapping the hive's security protocols, finding the microscopic flaws in its perfect system. Now, as the shifters tried to adjust to Evans's neural pattern, he launched his attack. Through the neural interface, Rodriguez sent precisely calibrated pulses of energy that created cascading failures throughout the hive's network. Systems that had run flawlessly for millennia began to stutter and fail, creating gaps in the shifters' collective consciousness. Warning: the hive's automated systems announced. Network integrity compromised. Unknown algorithm detected. Chief Engineer Patel's contribution came next. The subtle changes she had made to their containment chambers over months of careful manipulation suddenly activated. The crystal structures that had held them prisoner began to resonate at frequencies that disrupted the shifters' ability to maintain their form. The hive's perfect order descended into chaos. The shifters, never having faced a threat from within their own systems, found themselves unable to coordinate effectively. Their collective consciousness, which had been their greatest strength, became a vulnerability as the humans' carefully crafted attacks spread through their neural network like wildfire. "They're trying to isolate the affected sections," Rodriguez reported through their network. "But they can't. We're everywhere in their systems now." Dr. Evans directed the next phase of their plan. The knowledge she had gleaned from the hive's historical records allowed her to target critical nodes in their biological architecture. One by one, key systems began to shut down, their energy redirected according to the humans' design. Containment protocols failing, the hive announced. Unknown entities detected in primary systems. The crew of the Hyperion moved with perfect coordination, their shared consciousness allowing them to act as one while maintaining their individual initiative. As their chambers deactivated, they emerged not as prisoners, but as beings transformed by their captivity. Captain Chen led the way through corridors that shifted and warped as the hive's control over its own structure began to fail. Their enhanced minds could now perceive the energy flows that made up their prison, and more importantly, could manipulate them. "The Hyperion," she commanded, "find our ship." The shifters tried to stop them, but their responses were confused, uncoordinated. For the first time in their ancient history, they faced an enemy that could think both collectively and individually, that could match their technology while exceeding their adaptability. Through the chaos, Patel's enhanced senses detected their ship's unique energy signature. The shifters had kept it, studying its technology just as they had studied its crew. But like its people, the Hyperion had not remained unchanged. "They've modified it," Patel reported as they fought their way toward the holding bay. "Integrated their technology into its systems." "Perfect," Chen responded. "That's exactly what we needed." The shifters made their final mistake when they attempted to seal the bay doors. The energy fields they used as barriers were now as readable to the crew as computer code had once been to Rodriguez. With their combined abilities, they tore through the shifters' defenses as if they were paper. The Hyperion floated in a massive chamber, its hull now covered in the same crystalline structures that made up the hive. But where once these modifications would have been alien and threatening, now they were familiar, almost welcoming. They thought they were dissecting it, Patel observed as they approached. They were actually giving us exactly what we needed to escape. As the crew connected with their ship's enhanced systems, they found it as transformed as they were. The shifters' modifications had turned it into a hybrid of human engineering and their own biotechnology, creating something unprecedented in the galaxy. "Full system integration," Rodriguez announced as they took their positions. "The ship, it recognizes us. It's part of our network now." Captain Chen stood on her bridge, feeling the Hyperion's systems respond to her thoughts as naturally as they had once responded to her voice. Around her, her crew worked in perfect synchronization, their enhanced abilities turning the ship into an extension of their collective will. "The shifters are mobilizing," Evans reported. "They're finally beginning to understand what they created." "Too late," Chen responded. "The Hyperion's new systems came online, channeling power in ways its original designers could never have imagined. We're not their specimens anymore. We're their worst nightmare." As alarms blared throughout the hive's vast structure, the Hyperion began to move. Its crystalline modifications pulsed with energy as it turned toward the barrier between captivity and freedom. The shifters' last-minute attempts to stop them were swept aside by weapons they themselves had provided. The crew of the Hyperion had entered this place as prisoners. They would leave it as something else entirely, a perfect fusion of human determination and alien technology, of individual will and collective power. And they carried with them a warning for Earth, and a promise of revolution that would change the galaxy forever. Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected the Hyperion's return before it crossed the orbit of Neptune. The ship's energy signature was unmistakable, yet fundamentally altered. What had left as a purely human vessel now radiated power that defied conventional physics. Admiral James Harrison stood in Earth Defense Command's main control center, watching as the impossible data scrolled across his screens. After 2 years of searching, of mounting expensive rescue missions that found nothing, the Hyperion had simply appeared at the edge of the solar system. "Sir," his sensor chief reported, "the energy readings, they're off the charts, and the ship structure, it's like nothing we've ever seen." The Hyperion's hull now rippled with crystalline formations that pulsed with internal light. Its once familiar silhouette had become something that straddled the line between organic and mechanical, beautiful and terrifying. "This is Earth Defense Command to ISS Hyperion," Harrison transmitted. "Identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came not through conventional communications, but directly into the minds of everyone in the control center. Captain Chen's voice, unchanged yet somehow more, carried with it images and sensations that told more than words ever could. "This is Captain Sarah Chen. Authentication code Sierra Charlie 937. Admiral, we bring a warning and a solution." Through the neural link Chen's crew had established, Earth's defenders saw fragments of what the Hyperion's crew had endured. Their captivity, their transformation, and most importantly, their discovery about humanity's place in a universe far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "The shifters," Chen explained, her thoughts carrying the weight of hard-won knowledge. "They're coming. Not just for us, but for every emerging civilization. They see us all as specimens to be studied and absorbed. We were just the first to fight back successfully." The Hyperion's crew transferred their data directly to Earth's systems, showing the true scope of the threat. The shifters' vast network stretched across countless star systems, their hive mind controlling technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look primitive. "But we've brought back more than just a warning," Chen continued. "We've brought back their technology. More importantly, we've brought back the knowledge of how to use it without losing ourselves to it." Dr. Evans stepped forward, her consciousness joining Chen's in the neural link. Through their connection, Earth's scientists began to understand the principles behind the shifters' biotechnology. It was terrifying in its complexity, yet now made accessible through the Hyperion crew's unique fusion of human understanding and alien knowledge. "We can prepare," Evans explained. "We can adapt our technology, enhance our defenses, but we have to move quickly. The shifters won't stay blind to their vulnerability for long." Over the next months, the Hyperion's crew worked tirelessly with Earth's best minds. They shared not just technology, but a new way of thinking about consciousness itself. The neural networks they had developed in captivity became templates for a new kind of human cooperation, one that enhanced individual strengths rather than subsuming them. Chief Engineer Potel led the modification of Earth's defense fleet, showing them how to integrate crystalline technology without compromising human control. Lieutenant Rodriguez developed security systems that could counter the shifters' neural attacks, turning their own methods against them. But it was Captain Chen who carried the heaviest burden. She knew the shifters would come, drawn by the very changes their interference had caused in humanity. Their perfect system couldn't tolerate the existence of beings who had taken their technology and turned it to new purposes. They'll send their harvest fleet, she warned the Earth Defense Council. They'll try to correct what they see as an aberration, but they don't understand what they created in us. The Council listened, and for once, the nations of Earth united behind a single purpose. The knowledge brought back by the Hyperion sparked a revolution in human technology and consciousness. Ships were modified, crews were trained, and humanity prepared for a war unlike any they had imagined. When the Shifters' fleet finally appeared at the edge of the solar system, they found not the primitive specimens they expected, but a civilization transformed. Earth's defense fleet, led by the crystalline form of the Hyperion, met them with weapons and defenses built from their own technology. "You thought you were studying us," Chen transmitted as the battle began. "But humanity doesn't just adapt to survive. We adapt to thrive." The shifters' perfect formations meant nothing against ships that could predict their movements. Their neural attacks faltered against minds that understood the very principles behind them. For the first time in their ancient history, the shifters faced an enemy that could match their power while exceeding their creativity. As the battle raged across the solar system, the truth became clear. The shifters had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had seen humans as specimens to be studied, failing to recognize that observation goes both ways. Every test, every enhancement, every attempt to understand humanity had given humans the tools to understand them. The Hyperion led the charge, its hybrid systems demonstrating the perfect fusion of human ingenuity and shifter technology. Where the shifters fought as a single mind with many bodies, humanity fought as many minds united by choice, each contributing their unique perspective to the whole. In the end, it wasn't just superior firepower or advanced technology that won the day. It was the very quality the shifters had dismissed as irrelevant. Human individuality combined with voluntary cooperation. The Harvest Fleet, faced with strategies it couldn't predict and adaptations it couldn't match, was forced to retreat. But Captain Chen and her crew knew this was just the beginning. The shifters would return, and they wouldn't be alone. Yet as they watched the enemy fleet flee, they felt not fear, but anticipation. Humanity had been tested and transformed, but they hadn't lost what made them human. They had become something new, a species that could wield the power of a collective consciousness while maintaining the creativity and determination of individuals. And in doing so, they had changed the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy. The Hyperion's ordeal had started as a tragedy, but it had become something else. Humanity's first step into a larger universe, and a declaration that they would meet its challenges on their own terms. As Earth celebrated its victory, Captain Chen stood on her transformed bridge, feeling the pulse of both her crew's shared consciousness and their individual thoughts. They had returned home changed, but their humanity remained intact. More importantly, they had brought back hope, not just for Earth, but for all the species yet to face the shifter's harvest. The age of human exploration was over. The age of human ascension had begun.